Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. And we're excited about this community webinar on critical and creative thinking with Photovoice. Uh, click on your unmute just to make sure it's working for you, your audio. Before we get started, we'll be doing a small group exercise in breakout rooms. And so, hello.
Hello.
And
Hello.
So we want you to be able to speak and interact with people in the breakout room. Use the chat at any time to provide comments. Erin and I will be monitoring when the other is presenting. And during the Q&A discussion later, we encourage you to turn on your camera so we can see you, uh, but that's really up to you. It's optional. And we do plan to record this presentation so we can post it on our YouTube channel and make it available to others. So I'm Laura Lorenz, co-founder and educator at PhotovoiceWorldwide, and I have the great pleasure of welcoming Erin Bush, an assistant professor at the University of Wyoming. Today, we're presenting this webinar together. We thank you for being here, and after we each do some presentation with slides, we'll be doing a hands-on exercise and then opening the floor for questions and discussion for this hour-long webinar. And as many of you may already know, PhotoVoice Worldwide is a small business. And besides training, we do community work towards creating community. That's part of what this webinar is today. We're working on some resources such as a book and a recorded course, and we do consulting as well. And today I'll talk about, do an introduction to critical and creative thinking with Photovoice for about 10 minutes. Then we'll hear from Erin about some specific and practical strategies and tools before we do the hands-on activity and debrief together. So critical thinking, it is a cognitive process that influences, that influences our thinking, attitudes, and actions. It involves reflecting, observing, experiencing, and communicating. And it's something we do or maybe would benefit from doing often on a daily basis. It's a tacit process, something we may not even be aware is happening. And it opens our eyes to aspects of our lives and circumstances that may be something we didn't even pay much attention to, that our eyes skip over and just accept. And it is something we do on a more conscious basis when we're taking photos for Photovoice. This is a favorite quote of mine from Paulo Freire. The fact exists, but both the fact and what may result from it may be prejudicial to the person. Thus, it becomes necessary not precisely to deny the fact, but to see it differently. And that's what happens when we have the camera in our hands with Photovoice. We see things differently, our lives and experience in a new way. So creative thinking is a complement to critical thinking, and it involves not just the sort of rational approach, looking at something, thinking about it, but a creative aspect, taking that knowledge and doing something with it. And it involves developing new ideas and interacts with the process of critical thinking to illuminate problems and solutions. So there are really four key steps when critical thinking and creative thinking take place with Photovoice. So one is when people are reflecting on the research topic and taking photos. Next time is when they're discussing photographs and reflecting on experience. When people write captions and think about what they really want to say about a photo and communicate to others. And of course, when thinking about dissemination, who do we want to reach? Why? What do we want them to do? And the next steps, of course, too. So critical thinking occurs as people reflect on the topic, at what it means, and observe their surroundings. Observation is an important part of critical thinking. And as they take pictures that answer questions, what do I care about? What do I think or feel? How can I show this in a photo? When people discuss their photos together and have interaction, hear others' perspective as they explain what their photo means and what they see in the photo, and as they listen to each other, think about and ponder what others have to say about their photo and its meaning. And again, as people write captions to communicate not only for themselves, but to people outside the group, the Photovoice group. And here, when observing commonalities or themes, things that are occurring across participants and across the photos and captions, as participants identify those themes and common experiences and group their photos. What do the pictures have in common? What name helps to show their commonality? And it develops a stronger sense of connection to the project and the group. And finally, when communicating to power and conducting advocacy and outreach, participants engage in critical thinking as they consider who is the audience, where can we exhibit that will be accessible to the audiences we want to reach, and what form should our outreach take or our exhibit take? Should it be a static exhibit? Should we be putting on a play, writing poems? There are many different ways to reach important audiences. Who will see the exhibit? Where will it be displayed? Will the right people who can affect change get to see it? So we think of this as ever-widening circles in a way similar to the Bronfenbrenner socio-ecological model. But during Photovoice, with critical and creative thinking, first participants are doing self-reflection. What do I care about? What matters to me? What do I want to share with other people? Then, of course, thinking about the group and interacting with the group. A group process of reflection and discussion. What do my peers here in this group think about my ideas? What ideas are they expressing? And then reflection with invited guests, maybe bringing in a few outsiders to discuss the photos and captions as they are evolving during the project. And then finally, with the wider community in putting on exhibits or doing other outreach. So in sum, critical and creative thinking skills can be developed by anyone of any age level, any education level, or any level of cognitive ability. And building these skills is a lifelong endeavor and something to pay attention to throughout our lives. Practice with these skills during Photovoice can plant seeds for lifelong learning and growth. And developing these skills with Photovoice, and you as a Photovoice facilitator, can mean helping your participants to reach their goals for themselves, for their peers, and for their communities. So as a facilitator or a clinician, you can support critical and creative thinking processes and the learning they engender among participants. So now, let's see some practical strategies and tools to encourage critical and creative thinking with Photovoice. And I'm passing the baton here to, to Erin.
Hello. Okay, so we're going to talk about some strategies today to enhance critical and creative thinking during Photovoice. So why might we need to do that? Well, we might just want to increase participation overall. Maybe you have a quiet group. Maybe you're working with more vulnerable populations. And so maybe that they're more willing to, or they're less willing to share and we need them to somehow be a little more willing. So we want to make people feel comfortable. We've got cognitively impaired populations sometimes. We might need to help those folks dig a little deeper. And then also that idea of saturation we talk about in qualitative research, and which is just the idea of sort of making sure we got it all. So these tools can help us do that. So the strategies I'm going to talk about today are these three. And the first one is going deeper questions. So, you know, early on somebody might be, or your groups might be really sort of hesitant to start taking pictures. They may not know what pictures they want to take. They may not have a full understanding of the project either. And so at this point, it's often a good idea to really bring the project to the person and ask them, how do you see your role? And start to make it more personal. So what is it that you want to share? Or what are you comfortable sharing about yourself? What do you want that end product to look like? Or what is something unique that you can bring to the project that somebody else may not? And that can often prompt some more ideas as we are in those early stages of Photovoice. And then mid-project, you know, you might be sharing photos and captions at this stage, and a lot of times people will just share, not necessarily prompted, about other people's pictures and captions, but there might be others who are really hesitant to do so. So some of those going deeper questions we can ask mid-project kind of takes it back away from the person and back out to the project again. So really reminding people there are no right or wrong pictures, but then saying, okay, which pictures are going to help our cause? Or which pictures say the most or have the most impact? So now we're getting them to focus back out on the project as a whole, which might help go a little deeper with some of the captions and ways that they're thinking. So later in the project, of course, we'll already be asking who should be invited and where will this work be best received or most impactful. But a couple of going deeper questions might be, you know, who can have an impact? So instead of just thinking of who we might want to be invited and where the work should be, we really want to think about who also, in addition to those people we want to come, should be invited as well. And how does this apply to real life advocacy? And that question really helps our participants and us start thinking about whether the project will continue on and what stages might be next. So low stakes practice is another strategy we'll talk about today, and we're actually going to practice the low stakes practice. So one of the ways that you can kind of get people to share, because captioning is tough. It's hard to show pictures sometimes if you're feeling vulnerable, but captioning is tough. All of us feel a little apprehensive about sharing our writing sometimes. And so this is a way to maybe get people to feel a little more comfortable sharing what they've written and giving them an example of this exercise, and then really discussing literal and metaphorical captions. So one of the things you can do is just bring a very kind of generic photo and let people write captions for that photo. They're a little less invested. It's not their photo, so it feels a little less personal. So of course we have a literal caption. I have a couple of examples here. One of my favorite sounds is an elk bugling, so of course that caption would be about what's literally in the picture. Whereas if we had a more metaphorical or conceptual caption, you know, it might be talking about the fact that seeing elk is rare, and so appreciating rare opportunities, or appreciating cooperation when we all form groups. And so if the participants still seem really hesitant to develop a caption around just a generic photo, you know, you can keep doing this as many times as you'd like. But the other option is to also have generic captions, possibly, you know, on strips of paper or something like that. So now you have generic captions and generic pictures, and people can just start to match. And that also feels a little less vulnerable. And so sharing the captions then can help us revise them, and maybe we revise those generic ones. But it gets a conversation going, and it helps to at least start to make that connection of caption and photo together, which is what we want. So some generic captions, these are just sort of quick ones that we thought of, but any generic caption, you know, I'm proud of myself, I learned something new, or nature reminds me I'm not in control. So there can be a lot of different captions, and sometimes it can be kind of comical as well. So Laura and I thought we were kind of comical. Next slide. And we decided to pick one of the generic captions for this photo. So I picked "Animals bring me peace and joy." But Laura really is quite funny, and she picked "I love when elk can come together to accomplish a goal." One of our captions was "when people come together." So anyways, choosing a generic caption might be a way to get some more participation and get people feeling more comfortable. Then that third strategy I'm going to talk about is finding the words, and this involves some tools as well. So one of the things you might want to do is help people come up with those right words. That can be the stumbling block sometimes. And we need those right words when we're writing captions, or even when we're devising themes or coming up with the title of the project. So one of the things you could do is you could have a list of words ready to go ahead of time that have to do with the project, whatever your topic might be. So you could certainly have a list of words, and you could get people talking just about some of those keywords right away. But another way to do that would be to have those folks, your participants, generate words for you, kind of as a warm-up activity. And it feels a little less vulnerable to just shout out a word. And so that might be the way to start getting people to share. And then, of course, you write all those words down, and you can pull that list back out at different times, say when you're devising themes or titling the project, and look at those keywords again, and they're words that the group came up with themselves. And then I think another thing that's really important is, you know, Photovoice is really stimulating a lot of different emotions. Usually the projects hit pretty close to home. And so emotion or feeling words can be tough. And sometimes we may not know that exact word. And this kind of a tool, these 3 links are the 3 different versions of this same emotion wheel, feeling wheel. But you can see where, you know, if you're starting out from a place of being kind of scared, which is that orange section in the middle, you can see how then really giving maybe a more exact word to that feeling might be really useful. And so this is a tool that we can use. One example. So we're going to do a little group activity. We'll give you an example first. But what you're going to do is you're going to be in breakout groups, and each group is going to get a slide with 2 photos on it. And so this would be as if we're bringing a generic photo to you and you're captioning it, just as you might ask your participants to do. So you're going to come up with a caption. You can come up with one for one picture or for both, but hopefully you're really doing that together. And we suggest you really kind of focus on coming up with a literal and a metaphorical caption. And then you can just keep going. If your group is having a great time, we can give you another picture. Then we'll return and discuss in plenary what everybody found, and probably have a singular person from each group to share.
Right. Now, I am... So you're going to move automatically, but you can return to the main session anytime, and we'll be closing how many minutes after?
20.
All right, so I'm just going to change the time here, make it 20 minutes, just in case. And then the countdown time, the transition time will be up to 1 minute. So I want to, okay, I'm going to divide you up into 5 rooms. and automatically there'll be 3 people in a room, and I'm going to open all the rooms now, and people can see the chat and grab the slide and the captions anytime you want. You should be able to see them. If there's any problems, please come back out or send us a chat message, and we'll join you and troubleshoot. So thank you for coming back. It's exciting. I'll pass the baton back to Erin to facilitate our discussion and help us understand your own experience trying this out. What we can do is upload the slide you mentioned, or the picture, as the case may be, and talk. So what group would like to go first?
Okay, Elizabeth.
All right.
Good morning, everyone. So Erica is going to put up our slide.
All right.
Or, let's see, with our captions on it, and I will.
Fantastic.
At least she's going to try. For this will, as you say, it'll cooperate with us this morning, and I will just give a brief discussion about what. Okay, can everyone see that one?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we Amanda and Erica and I were in a group together, and we chose this particular set of pictures to create captions for. So the first one on the left, with the chickens accomplishing great things as they climb up that incline there. So our literal caption was "Teamwork makes the dream work." That's one of my husband's favorite sayings, and that just hit me right there when I saw that, doing that. So we added that one. And then for a metaphorical one, we said, "Are we on the right track?" Erica and Amanda thought that was a good one, and Amanda especially came up with that one, and that's we were wondering the same thing when we got to talking about chickens accomplishing that, or any of us actually. So good thing. So the second one, with the beautiful view there on the right, for a literal caption, I like road tripping on long and winding roads and finding new places in nature. They make me feel alive and at peace. And Amanda gave us the long and winding roads, which, if you know the song, looking at that long enough, that definitely comes out of that photo. The metaphorical, the road ahead and the timing of the year makes me think about being in between seasons of life. I can look ahead positively even though the hill is ahead of me.
Oh,
so
that's wonderful.
Those were our captions.
Very nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for the opportunity to do this. It was fun.
Yes.
Good to meet new people.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. That's great
Thank
to
you,
hear.
Elizabeth.
Yes. Who's next? Okay, Laura.
Yeah, we can try. Okay, we had the slide C.
Okay.
So I'm sharing the pictures with you.
Okay.
Okay, we don't have the caption written on the picture. We decided to start with the picture with the dog. So first of all, we had a kind of different but similar caption when we wrote 3 different. And so what else? Yeah, Rosalinda, she has a dog. So she wrote, "I love it. It reminds me my own dogs. I love the link between dogs and us." While Kodiak, despite the fact she doesn't have a dog, but she kind of entered in the picture, and she decided to write, "This was the day we brought Charlie home and the day I met my new best friend."
Aww.
And the caption I wrote was, "I like to see how dogs trust and are happy with their human friends."
Mm.
So we decided to put to merge the 3 captions together. And I would like to write this in the chat. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. So look at the chat.
So our final caption was, "This photo reminds me of my own dogs, the day we brought Charlie home and I met my new best friend. I like seeing how trusting and happy dogs are with their human friends."
Ah,
was merging one. We didn't discuss at all about literal and metaphor caption. We forgot about that.
No problem. No worries. There are no wrong answers.
So we went just with the flow, and we started to do the same exercise with the picture on the hockey. You can still see the picture, right?
Yes.
So Kodiak wrote, I remember every Sunday from November to March, Dad and I will go to the hockey rink and play. Those were some of the best memories of my childhood. While the caption I started to write was a little bit different. After each nice hockey match, someone has to clean the ice. And we didn't have time to continue.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Very nice. Thank you so much. So if we stop, I'm going to stop sharing.
Yes, sorry.
Yes, no worries. Okay. We have time for another group. Okay,
Sure.
Annie.
Sure. Yeah, let me see if I can share the photo.
And you were very enterprising when
Okay.
you couldn't access the slide.
Right. We had a little trouble accessing the slides. We were getting some errors and things. So can you see the picture, the waterfall? Okay, great. So I grabbed this off. This was Donna's idea to grab something off Google Photos. So I found this one real quick. And it was interesting because we had sort of two sort of different impressions right away of both stillness and relaxing, but also rushing and refreshing at the same time, cool and wet. So we didn't have a lot of time, but we came up with these initial, impressions, and then came up with the phrase, the cool, refreshing waterfall washes away our troubles. So it became sort of a combination, metaphorical and literal. But yeah.
It's great.
Thank you. And that combination is interesting.
I like it.
I don't know if you ladies want to add anything else, but that was kind of our quick.
Thank you. Yes. And just congratulations on, being flexible and getting a photo and making it happen.
Yes, thank you.
We had fun with it.
That's good. Okay. All right, who's next? I think Mala, has your group gone?
We haven't, but we did the same thing. We had to just grab a photo because we couldn't open our photos. So I don't know, Laura, can you help me? I can share my screen perhaps?
Yes.
Okay. So let's see, share screen. All right. So can people see this?
Yeah.
So this is actually a nest that a robin built in my garage. So we're hoping for babies this week. So I didn't realize that I was actually typing in the chat with Maureen and Marlene, and I think some of our things are in the chat. So all the new things I'm learning about.
Yes.
About Zoom, right?
Yes.
Oops. So I think the literal one, Maureen and Marlene, correct me if I'm wrong, because I can't get to the chat without stopping to sharing my screen.
It's not, wait a minute. I don't think.
It says my sharing is paused. I don't know why
you're sharing fine. We see the nest and the eggs, but you might not be able to see your chat from the
right. So maybe I can count on my group to help putting all our eggs in one basket. I mean, that's sort of the literal.
But you had some wonderful ideas about it representing nesting in these.
The time of COVID, yeah. in some ways sort of having to hunker down and be in our homes, our nests with people, you know, in our families or who we're close to, sort of this, you know, not by choice, but sort of, you know, that idea of nesting. You know,
nice.
if in some ways it's an image of social isolation, you know,
Together.
together, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we congratulate you on being, you know, enterprising and finding a photo.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's one of the things as PhotoVoice facilitators. We can do all the planning we want, have everything ready, we think, and yet, you know, plans change in implementation. And it's, you know, being flexible is an important characteristic to have in your hip pocket while you're being a PhotoVoice facilitator. Okay, well, I think we have one more group that hasn't talked, and then we'll move right into our conclusion. Is there a group that hasn't? Let's see, let me close this one, sorry. And is there a group that is still ready to share, hasn't shared yet?
Yeah, we haven't shared. Hi, my name is Kalina. I don't know, did I miss any introductions? Because I joined like 5 minutes late.
No, we didn't do an introduction. I'm sorry. But
that's
you're
okay.
right.
I guess that's one of the things I found a bit, what's the word? I think writing captions, I spend a lot of time when I work with my participants on writing captions because it puts you in a sort of, I feel like it's a vulnerable space to be in.
Yes.
And I found it interesting. I can share my screen to just show you what we chose, but I found it interesting to be writing collective captions, which I've never done with my participants, or it feels like to me like the caption was very personal, and because images are quite ambiguous, it was we had different responses to the images. So how do you reconcile that if you're trying to come up with a collective caption? So that was an interesting reflection for me. Let me see if I can share my screen.
Very interesting.
So can you guys see?
Yes.
So we had also a lot of technical issues. It was just the two of us. It was just two of us in the breakout room, and we didn't have a lot of time to actually come up with captions. But sort of we were discussing sort of the responses to the photographs, and for me particularly, this one here was kind of reflective of the situation we've been in recently, as because it seems very abandoned, and you know, it was basically it's inaccessible. So it's like it reminded me of all the things that are out there that we can't or we've not had access to, or we've not been allowed to have access to. So yeah. And then for this photograph on with the stones on here, I mean, on a literal level, we've got a heart, and you know that, and the obvious kind of things that evokes. But I found it interesting, the juxtaposition of the two photographs. So for me, I had a screenshot of some of your generic captions that you displayed before we went into the breakout rooms. And one of the things that stood out for me was, where is it? Sorry, just bear with me 1 second. I need to.
Don't be sorry. Not a bit.
Yeah, so the one thing that stood out to me, I guess, in contrast to the other image was, this picture reminds me that we can't take life too seriously. Just somehow this combination of the two images is like, okay, we're in a difficult situation, but, you know, try and focus on the positive and, you know, to make the most of it. So that's kind of my response. But I don't think we had a final caption that we'd agreed on as a group.
Well, that's an interesting experience, and and can reflect, yes, it's not easy if you wanted to do group captions in a project, you know, maybe at the point when you are ready to write them. The work of Brinton Likes at Boston College is one example of a group caption approach, her work in Guatemala. And a core group of people wrote the captions because they had felt very strongly about certain social justice types of messages they wanted to get across. But you're right, it's you know, how the individual expression versus the group expression and reaching audiences, you know, it's two different points of view, really. So thank you for that.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's something I'll look into. What was that project you mentioned? Sorry if I could make
not
a
at
note
all.
of that.
Brinton Likes, her work in Guatemala, and I'm not sure of the title of there's a book chapter. There's also, she's written papers. So if you send me an email after, I can send you that material or the chapter I have.
Thank you, I will do that.
Project. Thank you. Now I'm going to open up we're almost at time, so I want to be sure we get to our conclusion. At least I can stay. I don't want to speak for Erin, but I know we can stay on a little later afterwards. All right, Erin, I'm passing you the baton.
Yeah. So thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts and all of your great ideas. So in conclusion, we just, you know, PhotoVoice covers a lot of topics, yet we kind of run into a lot of the same challenges, even though we've got this wide range of topics. And of course, you know, our projects are designed to be inclusive, and we want to hear from every participant. And so just keeping our minds on that and making sure that we can help everybody so that their voice is heard. And just remembering some of the critical and creative thinking strategies we talked about today, but certainly you'll come up with some on your own as well. But we talked about those going deeper questions, and then low stakes writing, and then finding the words and really helping people kind of come up with more exact words for their feelings or thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And there's our references. And yes, we thank you so much for coming today, and please reach out to us. My email is not on there, but
it's on the first slide.
Oh yes, it's on the first slide. Yep. So if you need to reach out to me, please do so. Yeah.
Either of us.
We would love to hear from you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for joining. As long as the recording has worked out, hopefully Zoom hasn't decided recording isn't appropriate. Either we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel, the Photovoice Worldwide YouTube channel, and for people who've joined us today, we'll send a PDF of the slides with a thank you and a link to the YouTube channel. But we thank you for your flexibility today, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the future, we hope. And
Laura, are you going to stay on for a couple of minutes and take questions?
Yes. Erin, are you available too? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now, open it up for discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you for staying on. We thought it was important to try and do the exercise and not just be presenting. So we went a little over. Thank you. Bye, Rosalinda. Okay.
I have a quick question, if that's okay. You said at the beginning, and by the way, that was really enjoyable. I'm sorry, I again apologize for not having my camera on. I didn't realize we were going to need to, but at the beginning you said that this technique can be used for any level of cognitive ability, and I was particularly interested if you could maybe expand a bit more on people who have learning difficulties and whether you've used this technique with them.
I'm going to let Erin, yes.
Yeah, so most I wouldn't say most. A lot of the folks that I work with have brain injuries. And so that's kind of my reference point, which of course means there's a wide range, right, of cognitive abilities just amongst folks with brain injury. But definitely just a lot of times it's that there's a little bit slower cognitive processing, right? So in order to get that cognitive processing going and have them really kind of participate to the best of their ability, I think a lot of one way to do that is to ask similar questions in different ways. And so I think that's what some of these going deeper questions get at is, okay, but how can you be a part of the project? Okay, but what do you want to tell people? So I think sometimes it's the repetition and it's the rewording that helps, but that's been most of my experiences is working with folks with brain injury or some other kind of communication disorder, because I'm a speech pathologist and by training. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or if you have a follow-up question too.
Yeah, I think so. That's interesting. The repetition. Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's very helpful with this particular group. Annie, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on.
Yeah, no, I was just interested to hear that feedback as well. Amanda and I are working together on a project, so
Okay.
people with learning difficulties, and it was interesting.
Yeah.
We're not, thinking about how to, elicit feedback from people who have difficulty with expressive communication skills and things like that. So.
And I think when you come up with coming up with the singular words is a particularly good strategy to do with people with learning disabilities or with some cognitive impairments, because having them come up with a sentence about a picture, that might be asking a lot, but just asking them to come up with a word that reminds them of the topic can really get people going. And then once they're sharing, they're modeling for one another the appropriateness of the topics and the words. And so I think you can get together a good word list. And also remember, as a facilitator, there are words that they might come up with that you might leave off the list. And that's usually not, that's usually a good strategy. It seems to just kind of work out and blend in. But yeah, I would say coming up with those singular words is helpful.
And I wanted to add that from a credibility of research type of perspective, having participants come up with words in the beginning that then you're referring back to later as you prompt people or encourage seems very person-centered. And then you're not creating that separately. If this is for research, you're really grounded in what participants have said, which could be helpful then when you're writing up your results and describing what you did, that even with the supports you provided or facilitated, that you're still grounded in what people's thoughts were and what they said.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. Anybody else want to raise a question or a comment? Wow. Any sort of feedback for us? I see a few things in the chat. How nice.
Oh, I was thinking I had another question. I was wondering if this technique, I mean, it seems like it works well when you have a group situation, people come back to the group and share their ideas with each other. Have you had an experience trying this with just when you have a one-on-one researcher and participant situation without being able to do the whole group?
So not in this exact way, but in similar ways with other projects. I think it's actually much easier to work one-on-one because they're more willing to tell you what the problem is, whereas sometimes in a group, you can sense there's a problem and nobody's really talking about it. So I think working one-on-one is actually kind of great and wonderful for us, of course, if it's for research, taking all those good field notes and all of that. But I think that's where you can really get back into the focus on them and say, well, what is it that you want out of this project? Because they're going to feel less vulnerable sharing that. And then you can kind of really realize what they do want out of the project and help them. And so actually, I think that one-on-one work can be really good. It's just if you have the time and if you have the ability to work with everybody one-on-one. But yeah, I think that can be really helpful, especially pointing out what they bring to the project. You can really kind of get deeper into that.
Yeah, thanks.
Good points. Any last questions or comments? Well,
Good.
just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Erin and I will be continuing this work. So any thoughts or ideas, resources, please share with us. We always want to be learning. And we look forward to seeing you the next time or in future, we hope. And it's good to see familiar faces as well. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Bye. See you again, we hope. All right.
Okay.
Let's just
Oh,
finishing.
yeah, recording.